Welcome everybody. Today our topic is going to be about class interfaces. Interfaces are what I would say a critical portion of understanding Java. You can create functioning Java code without having any knowledge of an interface. But at an enterprise level, you will not be able to create code that behaves reliably without using interfaces, and there's a chance that you may not be able to even come up to speed in the domain of some organizations you work for if you don't understand interfaces. Nearly every seasoned Java developer will use an interface. There are situations where classes and interfaces can be used somewhat interchangeably depending on how you're using them. But one of the things that makes a true engineer, a true software developer, is knowing how to use these things in the way they're intended and through profiling what has been determined to be best practices or best practices through code organization, right? Remember, C and C++, those are great languages. C++ is the object oriented kind of wrapper for the C language. C is kind of what we call the systems level language. Remember, the polyglots are the ones that are in true demand, right? Meaning you can learn any language. And if you're going to learn any language, you need to learn where some languages really shine. In the enterprise, being very tightly controlled about how things behave, about how they're organized, Java shines very brightly, and it's one of the reasons why it's become such a popular language. So, with that, I think I won't need to write on my notebook for this lecture, but it's going to be something where we need to probably have a whole lot of maybe IDE work. So let's go ahead and get started. Sorry for having my splash screen on for like a couple minutes while I talk here. I'm going to pull up right away the repository. So I've already created a repository right now. It's empty. By the time this lecture is over with, it will be populated with stuff that you could go in and play with. Let's go ahead and let me bring that in. Go over here to my terminal now. Do git clone. Maybe I already have. Okay, I got to remove it. Sorry. The reason I do this is I want you guys to be able to see me do it so you could do it. So basically, I've just brought this interface back in. Don't do that remove -rf. If you ever want to see how to really screw things up and really make mistakes that you can't go back from, use rm directly. That can really cause some headaches. Notice that this thing never asked me, "Are you sure?" So I'm almost glad that I did it for you guys, because if you ever watch me do RM with something, I want everybody to realize that is a great way to mess something up to where you can delete entire directories of your computer and the machine will never even ask if you're sure. Okay, so with that said, let's move on from the terrible warnings that I'm always providing. Let's go right to our IDE. Now that I've brought this repository in and we're going to create some code for you guys to look at later, what I'm about to show you, what I just did, when you guys get ready to watch this video, you'll basically issue that git clone. Well, I'll send you the link to the repository. Clone that repository to your local computer. Then use IntelliJ to open it up. We will go to GitHub. What do we do? Teaching. Is that right? Yep. And then we'll go to Interface Basics. And what do we always say? Never open the folder from the GitHub. Always open the folder in IntelliJ that contains the first POM file. I think that's good advice for us. And here we go. So everything is all set up now. We have the environment all going. We have the IDE up and going. So all we got to do now is just populate it with code. So we go to source, all the way down here to our main function. I'm going to leave the main function. I'm not really sure about all this. I'm going to leave the main function as kind of our name of our class for the main one. That's pretty common. If you want to have like a main class that's going to be the main driver, that's going to have the main function that you're going to create, every class can have a main function. Sometimes it's good to create a class and put a main function in there to like give a demo of how to use the class. That's very fair. Other places just create one if they need to. Other people create one if they only need to. So here I've just got main class, main function, and this is where I'm going to start from as far as the driver class. First, what I want to do is, let's suppose that I want to create a new class, and I don't know, let's call it cars, my car class. Okay, again, don't do that. This is going to be my cars class. Or actually, let's rename this. Let me rename it to just car. I don't know what it cars. I'm going to do car. Now, if you notice, when I do this kind of stuff, it's going to rename everything that touches it. So always be careful about scope here. So now we just got the class called car. Now, here's what I want everyone to be quite aware. What are some things that we want our car to do, right? What are some things that we want our car to do? Our car probably is going to have a VIN number associated. So we probably need to have a way of setting and getting the VIN number. Remember what we said? We never ever want to do what? Allow people to edit class variables directly unless we have a very good reason to. So not all VIN numbers or not all possible strings are VIN numbers, so maybe we need to control that. I don't know actually all the formats associated with it, so maybe it'd be okay, but in every one of our variables, I'm probably going to have a setter and a getter. Okay, so let's define our class variables to begin with. We're going to say that it is going to have a string called a VIN number. That's something that's going to be there. And we're going to make all these private. Sorry. We're going to make all of the... I'm already struggling. I'm sorry. We're going to make all of these private. Now, what else do we have? We have private integer number of seats. How about that? Now we're going to have maybe... What else can we talk about? We have private... what could we have? Private string... color, right? We could do that. For the color on the outside, we could say, let's see, what can we say about our car? What else does a car have? We basically say, maybe, is it possible that we're going to allow our car to also be motorcycles, perhaps, because I'm kind of a motorcycle enthusiast. We could say, maybe, let's do a Boolean. How about that? A Boolean where we have, is it a convertible? And in this case, we're going to say, is convertible. All right, let's not get too crazy. Let's just keep things simple. So if we're going to have a public class car, we're going to say here is the VIN number. It's going to have a number of seats. It's going to have a color, and it's going to be determined whether or not it's a convertible, right? Let's just keep that simple. Now, let's suppose that we work for a company that does contract work. All right. Let's suppose that there's an organization out. Let's make it kind of really cool. Let's suppose that there's a big corporation out there that needs to hire my company to create this class called car. Now this is overly simple, right? The company does not want to get involved with like telling me how to do the implementations. Maybe my company specializes in interacting with APIs from DMVs or from car manufacturers, or maybe I know all the ins and outs of how the VIN number is constructed and I know it for all the vehicles. Let's just suppose that maybe, I don't know if it's okay to use it. Let's suppose Uber wants to have a place to store car information, and they're going to contract out somebody else to build the class called car. Now, can we all agree that at the same time the company building the car class is going to be developing it, the company that's going to be using the class may be developing things that are going to use it, and all these things are going to be happening at the same time. So what may be the case is that the contracted company, me, will meet with Uber, I'm going to be building the car class. They're going to be using the car class, and they're going to be developing the systems that are going to be using it while I develop the system. Now, if we don't have some sort of coordination, that means that I'm going to be developing things to where they might have an idea what I'm going to provide, but they won't know exactly how it's being provided. Okay, let's suppose that we have a grooming session. Now, if you guys ever work in an agile environment, you will learn about what we call a grooming session, where everybody sits down and they're going to hammer out exactly the high-level framework of what it's going to look like, and then the developers go and actually implement the low-level stuff, like actually doing the creation of classes or whatever else. So we're sitting around in the agile environment, and you know what? Uber says, we really need you guys to be aware of what we need, and then that way you'll know what to create. All right? So what they can actually do is create an interface. Now, I want you guys to be clear. There's multiple things that an interface does. This is just one maybe overly simplistic, almost silly implementation of interface, but it actually is kind of quite accurate. Okay, what we could do is we could create a new class, and in this new class we're going to create one that's called an interface, and then I'm going to name it iCar. Now, this is a throwback. If you guys are okay with me being older, right? when the realm of IDEs come around and they become quite good, because there was a time period where they were not quite good. But whenever IDEs really came on, like your IntelliJs really become super sophisticated tools, it's easy. Watch what happens when I create this interface, by the way. I want you guys to notice that the class car, I want everybody to see this. I want you guys to be familiar with the icons here. This C, this icon has a C in it, right? Does that make sense? This icon has a C right here, which means that that is a regular class. This class, notice what it's function. It's still .java. It is a class. It's just going to be called an interface. It is an interface. Notice it has an I there. And then I want you guys to look at main. Main is a class, but notice it has the green button. When I hover over it, notice what it says. It's called a runnable class. Does anybody know why that is? When we look at main, it's because main has the what? The public static main method, which means that that is an entry point for the Java compiler to start running. Car does not have that, so it's not a runnable class right now. Okay. So we got this interface. The reason that I label it iCar, right? Not that Apple's making the car, but I'm just saying, wouldn't that be cool if they made a car? I'd buy it in a heartbeat. But we have something called an iCar. Hopefully it'd have like a glowing apple right on the hood. Anyway, we have this iCar. The reason that we have this naming convention iCar is because at one point when we were all using Vim and Emacs, even though I have kind of said disparaging things about both people, even though I still use it quite a bit, some people stand back and they like twist their mustache and like, when I write code, I only use Vim or Emacs. And somehow, in their mind, in their grandiose mind, they believe that somehow that is indicating that they are like super programmer or something, or like super person with respect to the code writers, right? So if you can do it on a terminal base, you must be the supreme one. And now there are people that use it because they have to work remotely or whatever else in servers. I use it quite a bit. There are circumstances where knowing it is very good, but if you say it just for the sake of doing it, then you really are missing out on a whole lot of life. Anyway, I keep saying the same things over. iCar, the reason I put the I in front of it is because before the IntelliJs become super sophisticated and we had all these nice little icons to show us what we were, you could look at a class and everything had a .java. It wasn't like we had .inf or interface or whatever else. It was hard to determine which one was which. So if any file labeled with I something and then we had a class called something, then we knew that the I was the interface. It's kind of a throwback to those days. I'm not even going to say that it was even standard back then. We typically created directories where the interfaces went in, and we had a class for the implementations where the regular classes went in. So it wasn't like it was actually standardized. This is just something, a naming convention that I have watched a lot of programmers. Whenever I was in my development years, whenever I was a developer, professional developer, I guess it sounds like I gave that up right now teaching. Anyway, so when I was going through the private realm, it was just something that I seen that was common, or some sort of naming convention similar to it, that helped with organizations and just kind of felt standardized, and it just kind of stuck with me. So basically what I'm doing is I'm imposing a thought on you. Take it or leave it. All right. Here's a cool feature of IntelliJ. You can right click this, and what we're going to do is we're going to say split and move to the right. So just like VS Code, right? We're going to shrink this because we don't need this, the whole thing here for right now. Notice that we have our car. Let's suppose that before anybody starts creating anything, let's pretend like I didn't do this. The developers for the Uber people say, you know what? We're going to be developing the things that are going to be used in your class at the same time while you're all developing it. So you guys are going to be like involved. So the car people are going to be involved with the implementations and the deeds. But that doesn't mean that we won't know what methods they should provide or tell them what methods. I mean, we're paying Uber, paying them, right? So, or paying me. So they're going to say, you know what, you're going to have these things. And then they're going to provide like some information about how these things should look, right? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and have a grooming session. The Uber people are saying, we want these methods available. And then you figure out how you're going to implement them, but we want them to be available. What we can do is we could declare an interface. During that grooming session, here's what could happen. They may say, we want a public method called, maybe we could say, set ven. Sorry, this will be a void method, set ven. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send a string where you pass in ven. Okay, if we have a setter, then we also want to have a what? we're going to say this one should return. We're going to have a method that returns a string that says get VIN, and it doesn't require anything. It just returns what we got. Sorry. And then that's it. Well, guess what? Now we're going to have something that says void set num seats, and then we're going to pass in num seats, right? And then down here we're also going to have an integer that says get num seats, and it's just going to do that. Now, what I want you guys to maybe start thinking of is, how many guys remember back, maybe if you were a C++ developer or a C developer, we had this header file that kind of defines what the class would have. And in that case, we used it because we needed to forward declare something, or instead of having to write all the things in C++ in a certain order, the header file allowed us just to declare everything, and then we could write it in any order. And C, if you call a function and you don't have a header file, that function has to be above the function calling it, or else it doesn't know. Or you have to declare like the prototype of it at the top of the file, so that way it knows what the signature and how it's declared and what it's returning is. In some way, you guys need to think about an interface as almost at this point being a header file. By the end of this lecture, I'm going to show you some examples. By far, it won't be a complete overview of what an interface can be or can do. I'm just going to show you a few more things about how it's a little bit more involved than what you might think. So now we got void set VIN, we got string get VIN, we got void set number of seats, integer get number of seats. Then we're going to have something maybe where we want to say, okay, void set color, and then we'll put string color. Technically, we'd probably want to have an enum for that, but it's okay for now. We ain't covered enums yet. Void set color. Then we're going to have something where it says string get color, where we're going to get the color of the car. And then finally, we got one more thing, and that we're all talking around. And then the Uber people says we need your class to also tell us whether or not it is a convertible. So we're going to say void set is convertible, and then we're going to say boolean is convertible. Okay, then we hop down here, and then we're going to say we're going to get whether this car is convertible. So then it's going to be a boolean, and then we're going to say get is I cannot type today for nothing. Okay, there we go. So now what we have allowed to happen is the people that are developing the class and actually determining how it will be included, and the people that will be using the class, they have now created what's called an interface called iCar. What this interface is we will be able to make it a contract so that whenever they deliver iCar, they will guarantee that iCar provides those methods. Now, there's no guarantee, let's be clear, there is absolutely no guarantee that they have implemented it correctly. All this interface is saying is that if you're going to be creating this car class, it has to at least provide these. So now we don't have to worry about how they're going to say set VIN. Maybe they might name, if we didn't have this, maybe they might say set the VIN, and then these guys over here would say, well, we assume they're going to say set VIN, and then all of a sudden they had to rewrite the whole code because we didn't have a matchup on the things. So at the very beginning, they all determine what methods class car should provide. The people using the class will know what to expect. The people developing the class will know what methods are required. So you see the benefit of that automatically. Remember, in enterprise level development, there's an excellent chance that you have people working on code sections that you will never meet, and they may not even be part of your company. This happens a lot in very large development. So there we go. Now, right now, all I have done is just create an interface called iCar. That's it. So before in the other lecture, I have created another class, and right now it looks like my other class is car. What forces this to be automatic? There's a new keyword that I want you guys to be aware of. This is going to be called implements. Do you see where I'm going over here to the car class? Implements iCar. So at this point now, whenever I create a class and then I issue the keyword implements that interface means that whatever that interface says that I'm going to provide, I have to provide. Now notice that whenever I did that, I got a big red squiggly line. I want everybody to realize that so far my class has only defined a variable for string, num seeds, color, and is convertible, and it hasn't done anything else. So for right now, I don't want the constructor. Remember what the constructor does? It has the ability to like build up everything in the class that's going to be necessary. It's going to either maybe potentially set some variables initially. We're going to leave it just alone right now. So right now, the constructor is just going to be this. It's going to be completely blank. I'll do, even though if you don't create that constructor, it will create it for you, the default one. Sometimes I put it in there just to let people know that it was intentionally empty. I have even been known to do this where it has been blank intentionally. I have done that so that way people know that for right now it's blank and I'm aware of it and it's not taking me by surprise. So I have the constructor, but I have this interface called iCar that my class car is implementing, which means that every method in the interface has to be everything in the interface, every method listed in the interface has to be implemented into the car class. Okay. Well, let's hover over the red line and let's see what it's complaining about. It says car class must be either declared abstract or implement abstract method set ven string in iCar. Basically, what you're going to do is as we satisfy these going down, this error is going to update to say you haven't got all these. Once I've got all these implemented, guess what's going to happen? This thing's going to be satisfied with it. Okay, let's see. I am now going to do this. I am going to say void set. Actually, I'm going to say public. Sorry, public void set ven, and I'm going to put string ven. Okay. Now all we're going to do here is this is just a setter. So guess what? I may do some sort of checking here. Does that make sense? I may do some sort of checking to make sure the VIN is valid. Maybe I'll be reaching out to DMV things, but typically when you look at the VIN number of your car, some part of it is the manufacturer code. The next part of it has to do with model information. And then maybe the last couple of it would be like a unique identifier for that individual car. All of that goes to the VIN number. If you guys ever go online and look up a VIN decoder, you'll be able to see every feature that your car has using a VIN number, but it won't have to actually reach out to like an API to figure out what's in it. It'll be able to figure out by the VIN number, by the combination of values, which features it has. Manufacturers encode that. So anyway, we've got checking to make sure everything's set. So now that we've manufactured a car, we're going to have to set a VIN number. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, notice that this variable and this parameter variable are the same. So to resolve any ambiguous situation, the class variable has to be this VIN, and remember, I kind of like doing that anyway, equals VIN. What this is saying is this method will set this variable to this, and this is the value being passed in. Okay, and you can see it's color coded, right? This is color coded. Now, if you look, IntelliJ is complaining about something. It's saying here, private vim is assigned but never accessed. Well, that's because we're about to reconcile that very quickly. Basically, right now, IntelliJ thinks that you are just setting a variable, but you're never using it, so why do you have it? So that means the compiler's fine with it. If you want to do something silly like that, that's fine, but IntelliJ's kind of letting you know that, hey, this is assigned, but it was never used, so maybe you don't really need it in the class. Okay, so let's go up here. So it's yellow. We're going to leave that alone for now. Now it says class car must be declared abstract. We'll learn about these later. Or implement abstract method get VIN in iCar. The key word here is now that we satisfy VIN, set VIN, guess what it says? I've got the problem. I got to have a method saying I got to have something called get VIN. So I'm going to do public string, and then I'm going to do get VIN. And then guess what I'm going to do? I'm just going to return this dot VIN, the class variable VIN, because we set it, now we can get it. Now we'll go up here and look at the error. We hover over this, and it's going to say set number seats in car. Notice that that's the next problem. So how about I just make life easier, and then I will just copy these, and I will, hopefully this is okay. not too big of a problem. I will paste these here. So now all I gotta do is basically just use these signatures, and I just have to add a body to all of them. So that's set. Guess what this is going to be? This is going to be this num seats equals num seats. Not too bad, right? And then if you look up here, this has got some, oh, we got to call it public. That's one thing we don't have. We got to do public. Sorry about that. And I'm going to go ahead and add public to each one of these because that's going to be automatically necessary. Actually, I'll just do them as I go so that way we don't create extra problems. Notice that now that I've got that one done, I have to go and do this one now. So get number seats will basically just do what? Return num seats. No problem, right? Okay. Now, when we go up here and hover over, okay, notice that this error went away is because we've now got all the things that it's expecting. It's just these are here because we haven't defined a body yet. So now, how do we do a set color? This is going to be basically this dot color is going to be equal to color. Not a big deal, right? We got to make this public. Go down here, make this public because we want to make sure it's accessible. This is going to be public string get color. This is basically going to return a string that represents the color. So it's going to be return this dot color to return the class variable color. Jump down, we're going to declare this public. Yes, and then we got to put the body associated with it. And this is going to be this dot is convertible is equal to is convertible. Remember, the one on the right hand side does not have a this, so it's this is convertible. This one has a this is convertible. Notice that the pink means that it is actually here. So if you look, just to make sure we're complete, notice that it says it's assigned but never accessed. So it means why do you have it effectively? But notice that we're about to fix that by saying public boolean get is that. So this is our getter for the is convertible. We just return is convertible. Why does that work? Well, remember, there is no parameter here. So there is no ambiguous situation about what is convertible means because it is defined as a class variable, right? Notice it's pink down here, but I didn't put this. Anytime a variable is declared as a class variable and there's no ambiguous resolution to which variable name is going, here we can't do it because we have this value and this value being the same. This is required. This one is not because this is the only variable they can resolve to. If you guys remember, I said I enjoy writing this anyway. You never know when there's a junior developer somewhere. You guys will be the junior developer. You will appreciate the people that are very focused. Let's make sure we understand this. You guys, whenever you're starting out, will be swamped in code that are like code bases of millions of lines long. You'll be hopping through repositories, folders, and directories. You're almost sick, and it'll be 6 months before you're actually productive. That is what every company is assuming. So with that said, they know that you're going to struggle eventually. Even a seasoned developer will struggle in the beginning of a new company because they're learning the code base, they're learning their norms, they're learning other things. Seasoned ones come up to speed faster, but junior ones a little bit cheaper, so there's always a trade-off. You guys will learn as your new job evolves. You will start loving the people who take time to comment code, who take time to actually show what should be happening, who will take time to help you out, and we'll show you everything that's in there by doing comments in code and leaving comments for functions. That will be something that you very much enjoy. Okay. Now, with that said, we're going to leave this like it is, and I want everybody to realize that we no longer have any red lines, no squiggle lines down here. Notice what happens if I was to comment this out. Did you guys notice that we have one related problem here? What this means is that there's a problem inside one of the classes implementing this interface. IntelliJ is very good about linking everything together. It will look through code and anything it's using something else, it will let you know there's a problem somewhere. So if I go up here and look, here's some of them. When I hover over this, it must be declared or implement get is convertible. Why is that? Because it's defined the interface. Uber said they needed that, and so me as the person providing Uber classes, right, providing class implementations for Uber, I've got to put it there because they said it had to be there. I implemented the iCar. Interface, and we've got it. Okay, so that's not too big of a deal, right? That's pretty much standard, not an issue whatsoever. Now, I want to show you guys that this is really not all that big of a deal. It was very simple, but it's very powerful. Now, let's go over here and let me show you something. That's basically the interface. How do I use this interface? Well, the interface by itself has already done its job. It is forcing the car class to provide these methods. Okay? All right. So what I can do is I can go through and create my class where I'm going to say, oh, I've got car, and I'm going to say my Jeep. What do you think about that? And I'm going to say equals. What do? We allocate it, and then we say car, and then there we go. And then we have to go through and set the VIN. So I'm going to do my Jeep dot set color. We're going to say blue. No, it's orange. Sorry, it's orange. We're going to say my Jeep dot is convertible. That is true. What have I done here? I'm getting it. Sorry, I need to set it. Sorry. Set is convertible. There we go. Then we're going to go through and we're going to say my Jeep dot. I got to set the VIN, and I'm going to say it's some. There. We're going to do that. I just hit a bunch of keys. We probably don't need a colon there. Okay, so we got the random VIN number, right? We got the random number. Now what are we going to do? We're going to do my Jeep dot. We got the color. We got set number of seats. Is that correct? Let's see how many does it set. It's got 2 in the front, then 3 in the back, and then we got a back seat top area that doesn't have seats. So I guess we're going to say sets 5. Let's just say it sets 5. Okay. All right. That is effectively everything. Now, what I want everybody to take a peek at is look over here at this interface. The interface, there could be many classes using this interface, but notice what it has, this grayed out area. It means the grayed out area means that nothing using the interface is actually using getVin. So let's suppose that I want to maybe go over here and I don't know, we'll say I want to get these parameters. So I'm going to say get, let's see, my Jeep, let's see, system dot out dot. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's do string equals, let's do string info equals, and then I guess what we'll do is we'll just say let's see, VIN number. We'll say VIN. Let's do car information. Let's do vehicle information. Okay. And then what I'll do is info and then plus equals. Now, I'm going to tell you guys later on that these ways of building strings like this is terrible, but I'm just going to make it tab over. So I'm going to say tab over. I'm going to say VIN, and then I will put plus my Jeep dot get the VIN number, right? Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll do plus, and then I'll do that. Okay, and then we do info plus equals, and then what are we going to do? We're going to say what is the color, and then we're going to say plus my Jeep dot get color. Now I know that there's GitHub Copilot and stuff that will help me out with these completions. For right now, I'm leaving it off on purpose, just so you guys can see it. And I don't want GitHub Copilot just like exploding things out here on the screen that may be difficult for you guys to follow as it's happening. So right now, this is pretty intentional. As we move along, I'll enable that, and this will go like within from just like minutes here to just like 1 second. Now what we got is convertible. It's convertible. Let's see. Let's do convertible. 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 Let's we could say plus my Jeep dot get is convertible plus, there we go. And then finally we got the color, number of seats, so we got info plus equals T seats plus my Jeep dot get number of seats. Okay, looks like I got a spelling issue here. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say system.out.println, and I'm going to say print the info, and then let's see what happens. So I'm going to hit this. There's a chance we may have an issue, but let's just see what happens. So when I run this, it looks like it works, right? So we have the vehicle information. It prints out the VIN, it prints out the color, it prints out whether or not it's a convertible, and it prints out what it seats, right? So with that said, notice that I used my setters up here. My constructor did not really do it doesn't do anything other than just initialize the class. It's a default constructor. It just has an empty body. I don't even have to have it in car. I could actually delete this part right here. I like to put it there to show that I intentionally left it blank, but it's up to you. I used my setters to set all the parameters of my Jeep here. Then I used all the getters to print out the string for it. And actually, what probably would be better, just so you guys know, and I believe we've already had an example, you can actually add something called string to string, which means that this will be what gets printed. This is kind of a default method. Whenever you do print a class object, this is what prints. So we could go over here to this effectively, copy all this, go to car, and notice one thing about it. This does not turn red when you do toString. So why does that happen? It turns out that every class has a toString that gets built automatically. So I want to show you guys what happens if I don't actually do it. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say maybe system.out.print, and then I'm going to put my Jeep in there. What technically gets printed whenever you ask something to be printed by a class, it's implied that this toString is automatically there. Remember how I said the constructor? If I don't put this in here, it doesn't complain, because technically if I just need a default constructor, it will create that automatically. It also creates a toString method automatically, and that's what gets called when we do this. So now when I print this, you're going to find out that it's not going to be all that pretty effectively. It just prints out this. That's about all that it prints out. So let me copy this out. I'm going to run this. Notice that that's no longer there. But notice that when the toString happens, when there's nothing defined for it, it does exist. That's the reason when I add this to the interface, I want you guys to notice that I don't have a toString over here. That's because car, when it compiles, will automatically create a toString automatically. So what I want to do is I want to say, you know what, I don't like this. Who knows what all this is, right? We do know what this is. But for right now, we're going to act like it's not important. It's not part of the scope of what we're learning about. So now I'm going to do public, and I'm going to say string to string. And this is what I want my class to actually print out. I actually want it to do that. Instead of that, I want it to return info. Now here's our problem. This is what we had to use when we were outside the class. When we're inside the class, this just simply becomes what? This, and this. So now when I go over here to main, notice that before I define my toString, what do we say? toString did not raise an error here, because even though we haven't have it defined, it still gets printed. There's still an automatic one that prints out something that's not got a lot of useful information for right now. Whenever I actually add toString, look at what happens. I get this annotation that says I'm actually overloading it, which means I'm overriding the default toString. Anytime that you put something in there that would be by default, you get like something called an overloading annotation here in Java, where it's basically saying you're overloading this function. Now we go to main. We're telling it to print my Jeep. Now look what it prints. It effectively, whenever you ask it to print my Jeep, notice that I'm not doing anything other than saying, hey, print this thing, print this object. What does it mean to print an object? Well, before it gave some sort of like little information here that's kind of internal to the Java virtual machine. Out here, whenever I now define it to be toString, I'm actually defining what I want toString to do. And so whenever you call anything that says print of an object, it will look at the toString part to see what it should print. If it's not there, then we'll use whatever it defaults to, which really won't be much of a useful thing to humans unless you do some really kind of profiling type stuff, whatever. Anyway, so all that's very simplistic, maybe so simply to the point that it's kind of almost abusive, but anyway, that's it. Interfaces are very helpful. Here's what I also want you guys to notice. You can actually use an interface to declare something. Watch this. I could say, let's just call it car. Let's make something that doesn't make any sense. Notice how this is like, there's no class called CARR, so that means that's a problem. Now when I go here and I put iCar, all that is saying is that you can either declare an object by its interface, or you can declare an object by car, by this. Now watch what happens when I do this. Let's suppose that I want to create a public function that now does this. Public, let's say void engine noise. Okay, let's say make engine noise. Then we go here, then we do system.out.println, and we're going to go vroom. Okay. Now, whenever I go over here, notice this isn't used. Notice that whenever I ask my class to make the engine noise, I could say my Jeep dot make, let's see, make sure we got it right. Make engine noise, make engine noise. Okay, make engine noise. And it says there's an error. My class actually has that in there. My class has it. And it says there's a problem, like somebody's wanting to use it, but it's just not doing it correctly. So what's the problem? Sometimes you use interfaces to just define the minimal amount of things that you need. Like there's a lot of classes. Like suppose we create a class for a motorcycle. You may not necessarily have to ask what is the interior color of a motorcycle because there's nothing interior. Maybe you have an interface. The interface only covers the things that are common to all vehicles: a VIN number, the number of seats, the color. Does that make sense? Is it a convertible? Maybe a motorcycle is automatically that. I don't know. So let's assume that sometimes interfaces, they also just provide a minimal amount of functionality that's guaranteed to happen. Now, whenever I have a minimal amount of information whenever I have a minimal amount of stuff that's guaranteed to happen, that means that when I declare it using the interface, this thing right here is only going to behave like it's providing what the interface does. So if it's in car and the interface, it's going to assume car, my Jeep is only going to be able to provide the information up to the minimal interface. Now, watch what happens whenever I change this to the car class. Notice that now this works, because now we're actually declaring it using the actual implementation, so everything that this thing could possibly do is now made available based on how it was declared. When we go back to the iCar interface declaration of it, you see that now it's not, because my Jeep, despite the fact that all these things are defined, this declaring it my Jeep using the iCar interface means that this thing is only going to make available the minimum amount of things that are inside the interface. Does that make sense? Okay, so hopefully that does a good job explaining that. It can be a little bit cumbersome to learn all these tricks, but you will find that there are a lot of things in Java that get declared using their interfaces. And it's very helpful because sometimes you only need people to be able to use certain things about a class. Like if we have a class for motorcycles, we have a class for cars, we have a class for snowmobiles. All of those things have VIN numbers. All of those things have a certain number of seats. All those things have a color, but dialing on down, they may have things that are not very common. So interfaces are oftentimes used for things that have a lot of things in common. So let's think about 2D shapes. Every 2D shape has an area. Every 3D shape has a volume. So therefore, we may say that the circle, the triangle, the rectangle, we can ask any of those shapes. We can have a class defining all of them, but any of those shapes will effectively have get area, right? All of the three-dimensional shapes, cube, sphere, all these other cone, they all have a volume, but outside of that, they may not share common traits. One's round, one of them has faces, square faces on each side, whatever. So that's what we do. We sometimes use interfaces because the things that we're using for the moment, we only need to use a thing up to a certain point. At some point, we will learn how to extend interfaces. We'll learn how to extend classes. So that way we can start off with base things and then branch them out. So we may start out with an interface called vehicle. And then motorcycle will extend vehicle, car will extend vehicle, and then maybe Jaguar will extend car. And we can make these really complex systems that are very tightly controlled because we know that various people and various projects will be developing things simultaneously. And all we need to do is kind of groom and tell everybody what the scope of our project is. And that will be enough for all of us to work simultaneously for the people that will be using the class and the people developing the class could simultaneously be doing their work. Whereas before, typically what you had to do is you had to create the class and then you had to create the things that would use the class. No longer necessary. We could simultaneously develop things that are going to be used along with the thing itself. So it's a very popular thing to do. It's a very common thing to do. And it demonstrates, if you can master this, it demonstrates a whole lot of maturity with respect to Java development. There's a whole lot of use cases for this. As you become more mature as a developer, you will start using this more and more. So getting back, all these people that talk about how one language is enough or how anything outside of C or C++ is just crazy. It's because they've been in a very limited scope as far as their developmental skills with respect to software development. Maybe they have only been in one arena where like the thing that they're working with has been the only thing they need, and that could be true. Hardware people typically stay very heavily in the C and C++. People developing APIs and machine learning are very common in Python. People developing office level and enterprise level systems and backends typically use Java. And it's like all these tools come together and you need to learn how to use these structures that every language has. I know a lot of people that say they're very good at Python, but when you actually watch how they code, all they ever use is just sequential code where they say, do this, then do this, then do this, and maybe they have functions, but you never actually see them using the true power of Python or the true power of Java or interfaces or anything like this, these high-level structures that allow very powerful simultaneous development. So anyway, that is me preaching for the moment. Now, what I will do is I'm going to make this code available in the GitHub repository so that way you can play with it. Whenever you bring it in, you can erase, delete, whatever you want to. You don't have to worry about ruining anything because you won't have write access to my repository. So I encourage you to actually bring it in, play with it, and make sure that you understand it. I'm pushing it up right now. Notice all of that, and then we basically do that. Okay, so what you can see now is whenever you go to my repository, you'll see that it is populated with that interface demo. Whenever you clone this repository in by doing this and then issuing git clone and paste that, you don't want to open the folder that says interface basics. You want to navigate to the folder. When you're opening it in IntelliJ, you want to navigate it to this interface demo. Again, the best rule of thumb, go to the first, open the directory that contains the first POM file that you see. And that's usually a good way of going about it. All right, so hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it was interesting. Hopefully it provided some insight. And I look forward to seeing you at our next lecture. Thank you.